Are you new to programming in JavaScript? Then this tutorial is for you. Hi everyone, my name is Yazan, and I'm an instructor at Integrify Academy. We upload new content on YouTube every Thursday. Today I'm going to talk about the basic syntax of JavaScript. So if you like the video, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe button, and the notification bell so you get notified whenever we upload a new video. All right, let's go. All right, so let's get to it. What we're going to talk about, as I mentioned, is the basics of JavaScript and specifically basic syntax. Data types, variables, functions, and objects, arrays as well. But before we dive into it, let's talk about what are the data types. So we have two different types of, two different data types in JavaScript. We have the primitive data type, and we have the reference data type. So for the primitive, we have around 7, if I believe. So we have the string, number, null, undefined, boolean, and we have like the simple as well as the integer. Yeah, but let's just focus on these most five used ones. And then in the reference we have let's just make it as a different one here. So in the reference, it's an object. That's the only one in the reference. You might be wondering, where's the array, where's the function? So all of those are actually objects at the end of the day. So what is the big difference between the primitive and reference? So I can just talk about that just briefly. So the big differences between the number and an object or a reference is that when you, for example, in comparison, when you compare two values, or when you copy a value, so when it comes to primitives, it copies by its value, but when it's reference, it copies by the reference where it's located in the memory. We can definitely talk about that in more details and so on in the next videos, but let's just keep this rolling. All right, so let's start with maybe the first one is variables. How do you declare variables in JavaScript? So we have the very old ways, which using var, for example, var name equal like John, but var it has so many like bad things, disadvantages, which it's not really the best thing to do, which I'm not going really to go and give an example here or talk about it. But I will tell you, just stay away from var. It's better for you to go with the ES6 syntax, so with the lit and const. So let's start with lit. So what is lit? So what's good about lit is that you would basically, if you have a variable that has initial value and you would like to change it later on. So then this is a good place, or this is a good time for you to use a lit. So in this case here, that we can just initialize and assign a 0 to a counter, and then later on we could say, okay, go ahead and add 1 to the counter. So if I at this point just console log counter, let's just have a typo, fix the typo, save, let's just run the program. You see that we have number 1 here printed. If I just maybe add 5 to it and save, we run it again, and you see now we have 6. So it's basically kind of in lit you can reassign the value. But what's really good about it that yes, you can reassign the value, but you cannot declare another variable with the same name in the same scope. So for example, for scopes, let's for example just have a function like count, for example, and then we are free to name counter here. It's not going to throw any error because they live in two different scopes. Here it lives on the global scope, and this lit counter lives in this inner scope. So that's what's good about it. It's mostly scope based. So next thing is here. What if I want to create a variable and basically never change its value? So here comes the const. Const is basically a variable that or a way that you can declare a variable, and no matter what you do, you are not allowed to change it. Like, for example, if I would go with counter again with the same variable, and I'll say the counter is 1, I cannot do plus minus 1 here. With this one here, yeah. Let's just go ahead and console.log counter. Let's see what we are going to get. And if I press it, we get a type error, assign it to a constant variable at that position. So we cannot really reassign values to const. So now here, like if you wanna, now you're wondering maybe, hey, which one I should choose? Like personally, what I go with const to be as a default way of doing it, or declaring variables. And in case I want to, I would like to create a variable that changes later on, then I would go with let. But by default, I would go with const. You might have your own personal preferences. It's up to you. In this case, there is not that big of a difference. That's more about personal preferences here. Yeah. So that's about variables. Let's now jump into the data types. So we talked about like at least 6, 7 data types. We're going to talk about 5 at least. So we're starting with the strings. So we can have a variable here as an int. So this is how to create create a value, a string, a type string, and assign it to a variable. We do have another type which is it's an age, for example. Here's the number. And the other ones we talked about is the Boolean type. So for example, if you have a value that you're going to check whether like it's more like a logical way or a comparison. For example, you are checking, hey, is this user who's signing in or who's trying to access our this page, is he an admin or not? So most of the cases, the data type of that specific kind of variable would be an int or a Boolean. So whether true or false, there's no third option there. The other one that we talked about is as well like undefined. Maybe you have a student and you don't really have a value for it yet, but maybe you would assign a value later on. That's one. As well as you have, for example, another data type which is null. So the difference between undefined and null is that null, like it's there but it's empty. You can kind of think of it that way. But undefined, it's not there at all. That's kind of the two main keys or the two main differences here. So what's next? Let's talk about maybe objects. So if you want to create an object, so for example, let's call this student. You create it with, we have, let me just remove all these and keep just this one. So you want to kind of hold, or let's talk about like what is an object. So object is just a data structure, and you could think of it as maybe if you're from other programming as a collection. So you have a key and a value there. So for example, what is the name? A key and a value. So the key could be basically anything. It could be a name, or not necessarily everything, only I guess only 2 kind of types. So a name, a string, or what? Or a number. Maybe it could be something like that. It doesn't matter. So that's a key. A value, on the other hand, it could be any of the data types that JavaScript has. So you could save in it anything you'd like to. So we call this part as key, and the other one as value. And the whole entire thing, like what is this name? It's called a property. But the moment you have a function, for example, as like a value for that key, then what do we call this? We call this a method. So for example, you could say maybe return this dot name. So this in this case, it refers to this object. And we have a name property here, which is called John. I think there is a typo here. That's John. So let's see here. If we would say a student, and if you want to access a kind of a property in in that object. So there are two ways to access it, whether by writing the kind of the dot, so it would be student dot, and then you could choose either of the available properties you have, or by having this square brackets, and inside it you will tell which property you're interested in. So either way, it works like either way. So mostly I'll go with basically the dot. So now because say my name here is what is a method, so it's a function as well. So I can invoke a function. I'm going to talk about functions in a moment. So let's wrap this into a console log so we can see the values. Can we run it? Yes, here we go. Now you can see John here. Cool. So that's kind of like basically what objects are and what you can do with them. That's objects like are really fast, and you would use it all the time. So yeah, let's go to the next. And by the way, objects are reference types. So yeah, again, regarding the reference types, I think I will basically just talk about that later. So just to keep this kind of video short as possible. Okay, so lastly, we will talk about we still have functions. So let's just talk briefly about arrays. So array is also another data structures where you could save a list of, for example, list of doesn't matter what, but as long as they have the same type, most of the cases, or it's better to have the same type, right? Otherwise, it's going to be a really kind of hard to manage. And it will introduce a lot of bugs eventually. So yeah, it's mostly it's a kind of a collection of a list of the same data types, and where you just keep it or store it here. And then what you could do about that, there are so many ways to access or to loop through the array and access individual element. There's just basically, or this is numbers because it's a plural. So one of the ways is to use the for each. And by the way, there is, like, for what I've just talked about, we can just talk for hours, and I can explain so many things in details. But for the sake of the video, just to keep it short. But if you are really interested to dive deep in details into these stuff, and with more examples, and maybe in a kind of series like series like we first one we talk about only functions and then array and so on and so forth. So if you are interested, just leave a comment below so I would know and could write or prepare something for you in the next videos. So as I said, there is one way to loop through the arrays, which is using the for each. And at this point here, what it's going to do is going to iterate through every array, and you have access. So this is a callback function, which basically gives you access to or that's what at least it's for each method is expecting, right? So at this point here in this code, if you try to console log num, what we're going to see here is, if I run this code, see 1, 2, 3, 2, 5. So we have access to every individual element here at every iteration, and we can do all sort of stuff. It doesn't matter. Maybe I want to multiply those two. So if I run it again, you see that we are multiplying. Now the stage is yours. It depends on what really you want to do and so on. But again, there is so much to talk about it here. Just let me know if you would like to hear more about it. Last but not least is the functions. So functions, the idea of functions is to do one job, so one task, maybe count or calculate numbers, sign in, only one specific job that it should do. So let's go with again, say my name. If you guys are Breaking Bad fans, you will relate to this. So what is the syntax of it? It's so you start with the function keyword and follow it by the name of the function. What is that function name? It could be anonymous, but it's better for you to have like an actual name for it. So here inside the function, you could do whatever piece of code you want to do. So in this case here, what I want to have is, for now, I'll just console log my name. So Heisenberg, for example. And if I want to run that specific function, how can I do it? By just saying say my name and invoke it. So with these parentheses, I can now, let me just maybe remove all the previous code and just keep this here. So with this parenthesis, it means I'm invoking the function, I'm running the function. And if I were to run the code here, you could see that it's printing Heisenberg. So what if I want to make this a bit more dynamic, right? What if I want to make it dynamic and it doesn't matter what name I feed it, it will return for me. For example, let's just, we will return in a second. So in this case here, we can pass stuff or we can pass some data to the function via the arguments. So here I could say, I want an argument called name. And now what I can do here, what I can do is, I could do this. Okay, so I'm going to console log name, for example. And in this case here, when I invoke the function, for now, if I try to invoke it without actually like just keeping everything same, what I'm going to get, can you guess? Yes, it's undefined. That's great. So because we have not, provided any value here when we are invoking it, then it's going to be undefined because it's just there's nothing there, nothing at all. Remember? So how can we define the variable or a value for the name variable here? So this could be done by adding a parameters here, or arguments in this case. So here we called it. Let's just go with, for example, Heisenberg. So these are arguments to a function, and these called parameters. So we provide an argument here, and now if I would just run that, you see now it's printing Heisenberg. I could basically go ahead and say, okay, let's say my name to John, and maybe let's go with Jesse, for example. And if I run and invoke the functions, now we are basically printing all these three. The one more thing as well, what you could do here, you could return value from the function. Maybe you don't really, in reality, you don't really maybe need to kind of console log things. So maybe I would just go with other example. Let's go with a function, maybe or sum. And the sum, what it does here, it takes two arguments here, so A and B. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to return this value, so A plus B. And so when I'm invoking it, I just say sum, and then remember the order matters. So if this is at the beginning, then this is the first, and that's the second. So sum 2 and 2. So what's going to happen here is this data from this argument will go all the way to these parameters and then travel to this line, and then the computation will happen, which is A plus B, so 2 plus 2. And if I try to kind of now I need to console log it because at the moment it's just returning. I'm not doing anything with it. Like if I would do node or run it, you see it's just empty. I could maybe just basically just go ahead and assign it to a variable. Like I would call it, I don't know, out of ideas, I don't know, final. Yeah, it doesn't matter at least for now. So now what I could do, I could now console log final. And if I do so, and run the program again, you see now it's printing 4. So what is happening here? So let's go through the flow a bit, and we can just wrap up this video. So the function gets invoked, and those two arguments travels all the way here, and then we compute the value A plus B, and then what we do is we return the value. So what this return will do is it will go ahead and return the value, and now sum will be what? It will be for example, the number 4. So in this case, let's just delete those, and then it will be number 4. That's kind of what's happening under the hood. And then we'll console log number 4. So yeah, that is what's really happening. Cool. Yeah. So maybe this video a bit longer than expected. I was planning to do it in 10 minutes, but there is no way. There's so much to talk about, and there are so many things that I haven't even talked about. But if you are really interested to hear more about it, please leave in the comment below. All right. All right, so that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below if you have any comments. So see you next week.